Hello everybody. Today we are going to look at a play, namely The Good Person of Szechwan, written by Bertolt Brecht. Bertolt Brecht was a modernist, German theatre practitioner, playwright and a poet. He was also engaged in Marxist thought and philosophy. He was the founder of the theatre company called Berliner Ensemble. He became a leading theoretician and practitioner of epic theatre. When we are talking of Brecht, it becomes very important for us to understand the concept of epic theatre. Through epic theatre, Bertolt Brecht endeavored to show the world as it is, to spur or urge the audiences to take social action. To this end, Brecht also popularized the concept of Verfremdungseffekt, also known as the V effect, which is translated as alienation effect or estrangement effect. This means to discourage the viewers who might otherwise lose themselves in the story of the theatre. He incorporated certain conventions that would constantly remind the audience that they are at the theatre. The label dialectical theatre was used by Bertolt Brecht. Later in his career, he preferred to use dialectical theatre instead of epic theatre. The play The Good Woman of Szechwan is a parable. It has a very important message to give us, whether goodness can survive in an evil capitalist system. It was produced in 1943 and published in 1953. The title of the play has many English language variants, including The Good Person of Szechwan, The Good Soul of Szechwan. The play's title is often translated as The Good Woman of Szechwan rather than Szechwan. But Szechwan is a province, while Szechwan is a city. According to translator Eric Bentley, Brecht identified the location or the setting of the play as a city, so he must have meant Szechwan. The play is set in China between the two world wars. The Good Woman of Szechwan is an example of non-Aristotelian drama, a form made popular by Brecht and defined in his notes and essays entitled On a Non-Aristotelian Drama. Greek philosopher Aristotle outlined the differences between classical tragedy and epic. Brecht, however, theoretized a new form of theatre called the epic theatre. Aristotle believed in the concept of catharsis and the unities. Brecht, however, did not believe in a suspension of disbelief and the audience consuming itself in the action of the play and at the end going through an emotional catharsis. He wanted audience to feel rationally about the play, take objective constructive action, and to bring about changes in the world. His play was more about action and less about emotional entanglement. Brecht intended his plays to be staged using the methods of epic theatre. Epic theatre proposed that a play should not cause the audience to emotionally identify with the characters or action before him or her. It should instead provoke some kind of self-reflection, a critical view of the action on the stage. Epic theatre sought to historicize and address social and political issues. It is very different from the classical dramas written in Greece Therefore, his conception of drama greatly differs from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. We are going to learn a little more about epic theatre in the later slides of the play. Let us now look at a brief summary of the play. The play is a parable written in 10 scenes. It begins with the prologue, where we meet this character Wong, who is a citizen of Szechwan. He is a water seller, and poverty is not unusual in Szechwan. Many locals believe that gods are the only ones who can save the situation. Wong has heard a rumor that gods will be soon arriving to Szechwan. Therefore, every day he has been standing out at the city gates of Szechwan in order to welcome the gods. 3 people dressed shabbily, traveling barefoot, approach, and Wong realizes that these 3 men must be the illustrious ones or the gods he has been waiting for. He throws himself at their feet, promising to do for them anything they might need. The gods only ask for shelter for the night. Wong struggles to find the gods a place to stay, and this reflects the self-serving narcissism and greed that is rampant in Szechwan. People are so focused on taking care of themselves and their families that they reject strangers, even those strangers who come bearing divine gifts. After being rejected repeatedly for finding shelter, Wong tells the gods that he will take them to the house of the good Shente the prostitute. Shente leans her head out of the window and says that she can't take the gods in because she's expecting a customer. Shente's portrayal of a prostitute in the play also highlights the situation of women who have to survive in a vicious capitalist society. After Wong pleads with her, Shente decides to hide from the customer and she takes the gods in. Shente tries to give shelter to the gods, and this shows her generosity and her goodness. Wong tries to hide Shente's profession from the gods, but it is obvious that they already know what is going on. Shente, as portrayed in the play, is a poor and a kind prostitute. She takes in the 3 gods for the night when the other neighbors of Szechwan refuses them. Shente proves the gods' belief that there are still good people on earth. Shente is a meek, gentle, kind and dutiful woman. The gods give her silver to have given them shelter. With this, she acquires a tobacco shop. But she soon finds herself in trouble as news of her good fortune spreads throughout the town. The greedy people of Szechwan soon begin to exploit her goodness and to take her for granted. Shente claims that she has a male cousin Shuita, who is a savvy businessman. When Shente is almost about to lose her store, Shente disguises herself as the shrewd and ruthless cousin Shuita. Shuita makes all the unpopular decisions to keep the shop running successfully so Shente can retain her good impression in front of the people of the city of Szechwan. Shente realizes that it is Shuita's personality of viciousness and ruthlessness that will only help her to survive in this capitalist economy. Being good and being kind will not serve her in running the tobacco shop. This is an important moral message in the play. Shente meets a suicidal, out of work but romantic pilot named Yang Sun and falls in love with him. Yang Sun is poor and cruel, but Shente loves him deeply. Shente's needy neighbors lament that Yang Sung is distracting her from her duties to them. While Shente is hoping to pull Yang Sun out of financial ruin, she becomes indebted to an old man and an old woman who owns a nearby carpet shop in an arrangement which threatens her goodness. While in disguise, Shente learns that Yang Sung is only using her for money because he needs to bribe someone at an airfield in Peking for a job. Nevertheless, Shente chooses to move forward with her wedding. However, the wedding turns out to be a disaster because Shente's alter ego Shuita cannot be present at the ceremony. Yang Sung's mother, Mrs. Yang, insists that Shuita arrives at the ceremony, and therefore the marriage is never confirmed. Mrs. Shin soon discovers that Shete is actually disguising herself to be Shuita. In order to keep this a secret, Mrs. Shin capitalizes on this and asks for a large stock of stolen tobacco which the family of 8 brings into her shop. A blank check from Shufu allows Shete as Shuita to open up a shop in a series of cabins that Shufu owns on the outskirts of the town. Shente meanwhile has become pregnant with Yang Sung's illegitimate child. Mrs. Shin warns her that Shufu will seize his generosity if he learns of Shente's condition. Shente decides to stay in disguise as Shuita for months on end. Though the tobacco business flourishes, the needy villagers begin missing the sweet, generous Shente and even worries that Shuita might have murdered her. At Wong's request, policeman confronts Shuita and demands to know where Shente is. Shuita cannot give an immediate answer. He is arrested. Wong warns the god that if Shente has truly vanished, then all is lost. So the gods reluctantly agree to return to Szechwan to help to look out for her. At Shuita's trial, the entire village gathers. The gods enter in disguise as a trio of judges to hear the arguments. The agitated crowd of Szechwan demands to know why Shente has left Szechwan. Shuita declares that if she had stayed, the villagers would have ripped her to shreds by exploiting her to the limit. Shuita demands for the courtroom to be cleared because he has a confession to make to the judges. In front of the judges, Shuita reveals herself to be Shente. She drops her disguise and reveals the truth. She describes that it has been extremely hard for a good woman to survive in this society, and she could only survive in this capitalist economy, run a successful tobacco shop only by adopting the male figure of Shuita. The gods are shocked to learn the truth, but they don't blame her for becoming the wolf. Shente points out that she failed to be a good woman and instead became a bad man. Shente wants the judges to solve her moral crisis, but the gods choose to not answer her. She begs the gods to tell her what to do about all her confusions and crises in life. The gods, however, just simply advise her to continue to remain good. The play questions whether it is possible to survive as a good person in a capitalist society. Brett added the epilogue after the rest of the play. It can be spoken either by Shente's character or by Wong. In the epilogue, it is clearly acknowledged that the audience will end up with a very nasty ending, as the play has no satisfactory conclusion. It becomes very frustrating audience because Shente's cries to the gods receive no answers. The important question of how to remain good in an evil society is not answered in the play. So the audience is implored to write the happy ending of the play. They must themselves figure out how to reconcile goodness in a world where it apparently cannot exist. Shente is the female protagonist of the play. She is the poor and kind prostitute in the city of Szechwan. She is the one who gives shelter to the three gods for the night, when the other neighbors of Szechwan refuses the god shelter. Shente proves the gods' belief that there are still good people on earth. Shente is a generous, meek woman who does her best to be a dutiful citizen. In a capitalist society, she is driven to prostitution for her survival. The gods give her a large sum of money for giving them shelter. Shente uses the silver to acquire a tobacco shop. But soon she finds herself in trouble as news of her good fortune spreads throughout town. People soon begin to exploit her goodness. Shente later claims that she has a male cousin, Shuita, who is a savvy businessman. When she is about to lose her store, Shente disguises herself as the shrewd and ruthless male cousin Shuita. Shuita makes all the unpopular decisions to keep the shop running, and Shente retains her good impression in front of the people of Szechwan. By the end of the play, however, when Shente is exhausted by her own pretense, and when she is arrested in her alter ego as Shuita, she reveals the truth of her schemes to the gods, only to find that they are unwilling to have their opinion of the last good woman on earth changed. As the gods ascend to heaven, Shente calls out to them for help, begging them to give her advice on how to be good while also living life for herself. Shente's screams go unanswered, however, and she is left all alone. Shuita is the persona that Shente has to create in a moment of desperation as an answer to her landlady, Mrs. Misu's inquiry about Shente's financial references. As Shente's bad cousin, Shuita is imposing, a ruthless man who is business savvy. He is unapologetically selfish, and in contrast to the meek, sweet and good Shente. Dressed as the male Shuita, she wards off those who seek to extort money from her or take advantage of her good fortune. She also has a man-to-man conversation with her distant cruel lover Young Sun, who had just acted to have fallen in love with her to actually draw money from her. Shente comes to rely on Shuita's presence more and more often, especially when she becomes pregnant out of wedlock and she is desperate for a way to hide her condition from the world. Shuita's ruthlessness becomes legendary as he steals, bribes, intimidates the needy neighbors. He was created to help and becomes the owner of a large tobacco conglomerate. Brett clearly tells us that these qualities are required to survive in a capitalist economy, which fails to help a good, kind-hearted person survive. Shuita is later arrested because the other villagers begin to suspect that he has murdered the missing Shente. Shente realizes that her pretense has gone far enough. She reveals the truth to the judges of her case, the gods who first declared her the good woman of Szechwan, who have returned to the village in disguise as judges. But she finds that they do not find fault in her for becoming a wolf or a vicious person when tempted by money and power. Learners, now we have arrived at a very important topic, that is Brett's conception of the epic theatre. Brett conceived of the epic theatre to be a medium that would discuss political ideas and create a critical aesthetics of dialectical materialism. Epic theatre proposed that a play should not cause the audience to identify emotionally with the characters or action before him or her. In other words, Brett did not support the idea of catharsis in the audience. But epic theatre should rather provoke rational self-reflection and critical view of the action on the stage in the audience. Epic theatre historicizes and addresses social and political issues. Brett wanted his audience to adopt a very rational, objective, critical perspective in order to recognize the social injustice and exploitation and to be moved and to go forth from the theatre and effect change in the world outside. Brett called his work epic or dialectical theatre later due to his style of engaging with the audience. Rather than engaging audiences to suspend disbelief or become completely immersed in the story, Brett's plays push audiences to think and comprehend and to take constructive action. Brett beautifully wrote, "Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it." He wanted to engage his audience in a critical evaluation of character and action rather than draw them into an emotional involvement. This play, A Good Person of Szechwan, is Brett's personal example of what he deemed the epic theatre. In this play, Brett clearly critiques the capitalist form of government where everyone is greedy for success, money, power, possessions. People of Szechwan begin to exploit the good Shente as soon as she becomes successful with her tobacco shop. In this capitalistic world, everyone seems to be in a rat chase to gain money, favor, and success. Everyone needs to involve in loathsome negotiations and ruthless deeds like Shuita to stay successful in capitalist society. Brett in this play also holds up his own Marxist beliefs. Brett sought to illuminate the historically specific features of an environment in order to show how the environment influenced, shaped, and often battered and destroyed the characters. In this modern age, in the Chinese province of Szechwan, the good-natured Shente is absolutely battered and shattered, who is forced to take up the alter ego of the vicious Shuita to survive in society. Unlike other dramatists who focused on the universal element of the human situation and fate, Brett was interested in the attitudes and behavior adopted towards each other in specific historical situations. In this play, the age is of course the modern age. The play also challenges spectatorship and the identification the audience understands to be the universal human condition. The epic theatre strove to break the fascinating, trance-like effect of the dramatic spectacle. The play does not uphold a spectacle in front of the audience to think of it as happening merely in a theatrical world. Brett urges his audience to understand how the good are being exploited in a capitalist system and then to actually do something about it. Brett urged the spectator to become critical observers, rouse his thought and action. The spectators were made to understand how goodness is easily exploited in society by the character of Shente and how difficult it is for a genuinely good person to survive in the world, hence Shente's adopting of her alter ego, Shuita. A parable is a moral story in prose or verse that illustrates one or more instructive lessons. It differs from a fable because a fable employs animals, plants, inanimate objects, or forces of nature as characters. Parables make use of human characters. In The Good Person of Szechwan, Bertolt Brecht confronts one of the great contradictions of modern life, of capitalist society, that is, the impossibility of remaining good while participating in the market where everyone is greedy and lusty for power. This concept is well expressed through the characters of Shente and also her lover Yangsun. Shente initially is able to maintain her goodness, but with her success, when people start exploiting her and takes her for granted, in order to survive in the capitalist society, she is forced to take on the persona of her fictional cousin Shuita. At first, Shuita appears only when Shenten is in particularly desperate situations. But as the action of the play develops, we see that Shente becomes completely subsumed by this alter personality of Shuita. Shente is soft, compassionate, vulnerable, whereas Shuita is unemotional, pragmatic, even vicious, and it seems that only Shuita is made to survive in the world in which they live due to these negative qualities. The moral message within the play becomes clear. The environment of a capitalist society prevents the happening of both survival and goodness. The effect of social conditions imposed by capitalism can be seen in characters within the play. Most notably, Shente, who in order to survive must either become a prostitute or become Shuita, the vicious cousin. Shente, in order to survive, must become Shuita because despite the moral and ethical complications, the idea of survival over morality is explored in the play, and the resulting parable play, as Brett himself dubbed it, confronts one of the great contradictions of modern life, as we have spoken about before, that it is impossible to remain good while participating in a capitalist market. This reference to capitalist market, the environment and the society that creates human character or shapes human actions also pertains to Brett's Marxist thought and philosophy. Through this parable of Shente, Brett explores the pitfalls of capitalism, the constraints of femininity, and the fluctuations in identity and morality that can occur when an ordinary woman feels. Alone in the room with the gods, when Shente drops her disguise and reveals that she herself is both Shuita and Shente, the gods are shocked. In a sorrowful lament, Shente describes how hard it has been to try to be good and yet to live in this society. She feels she has literally been torn in two. She hates that bad deeds are rewarded and while good ones are punished. The gods insist that Shente should stop beating herself up, and they tell her how happy they are to have found the one good person they encountered in all their troubles. Shente points out that she failed to be a good woman and instead became a bad man. Here we see Brett's idea of gender coming through, where he uses the woman as the typically good, naive, innocent, gracious character and the ruthless, vicious male character who can survive in capitalist societies. The gods, rather than help Shente solve her moral crisis, the gods choose to return to their void by ascending into the sky on a pink cloud. Shente begs the gods to tell her what to do about all of her problems and crises that had happened in her life due to her dual personality. The gods, however, tell her simply to continue to be good. Thank you everyone for watching and for your patience. Please subscribe to this channel if you would like to have more content on English literature texts. Please feel free to comment and give me feedbacks. Thank you.